I came back early from a business trip and walked right into a nightmare. My wife had changed the locks on the house without saying a word to me. I stood on the doorstep, key in hand, and my phone buzzed. A text from her, sent while she was sitting on our couch. "I found someone better. Don't bother coming in." I stared at the screen for a moment, took a deep breath, and replied, "Are you sure about that?" Then I just walked away, suitcase in tow, and didn't look back. 4 days later, she was screaming at me over the phone, but by then the damage was already done. I'd been out of town for a week, working on a project that could change everything for me. It was one of those opportunities you don't get twice, and Vivian had been so supportive when I left. But as the days went on, things started feeling off. Texts that used to be warm and full of questions about my day were replaced with one-word answers. When I shared the news that the project was going well, she'd just reply, "Cool" or "Nice." I tried to brush it off, telling myself she was just busy, but something inside me told me I was missing something. Then came the phone call, the last one before I came home. I'd been talking to her for less than 5 minutes when I heard a sound in the background, a deep male laugh. My heart stopped. "Who's there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She quickly said it was just a TV show, but I could tell something was off. Our TV had a very distinct sound, one I set up myself. I pressed her, but she just brushed me off and hung up, claiming she had a headache. It felt like a red flag, but at that point, I was too close to coming home to worry about it. When I landed, things didn't improve. I sent a quick, "just landed" text, but it went unanswered. Vivian always replied to those right away. The ride back home felt longer than usual, and as I neared the house, I noticed a few things that made my stomach churn. First, her location was turned off on our family sharing plan. Then I saw her latest Instagram stories, showing angles of the house I'd never seen before. It was almost like she was trying to hide something. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but then I got to the front door. My key didn't fit. I thought it was just stuck at first, but after a few tries I realised the lock had been changed. Standing there on the doorstep, suitcase still in hand, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was it. The end. And then my phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. "I found someone better. Don't bother trying to come in. I've moved on." I could almost feel her eyes on me, watching through the security camera, waiting for my reaction. I took a breath, texted back, "Are you sure about that?" and walked away. No drama, no yelling, just quiet resignation as I wheeled my suitcase down the path. I checked into a nearby hotel and immediately called my best friend, Damon. Within an hour, he'd already done some digging and found out what I hadn't seen. Vivian had been seeing someone named Mark, a guy from her work. They'd been hanging out at restaurants, even attending a few corporate events together over the past few weeks. What struck me, though, was that Mark had a history of getting involved with ambitious women right before they were about to make big moves in their careers. Vivian had always been career-driven, and I'd helped her every step of the way. I started putting the pieces together, but there was one more thing I needed to check. Vivian wasn't very tech-savvy, so I knew she hadn't changed the passwords on anything. I logged into our shared cloud storage, and sure enough, there it was. Photos of her and Mark, taken inside our house over the last month. She didn't even try to hide it. But here's the kicker. While she was busy making her exit, she forgot about the investment portfolio document I helped her set up last year. I smiled as I saw it still sitting there in our cloud folder, untouched. I knew this was my moment. I took a screenshot of the document and immediately sent it to my lawyer. I texted Vivian, "Give me 4 days, then we'll see who found something better." Her reply came fast. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't bother to respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and started reaching out to a few colleagues from past projects. By the time midnight rolled around, everything was in place. Tomorrow I'd start making my move. For now, I'm just sitting back and enjoying the constant buzz of my phone as Vivian scrambles to figure out how much I know. She thinks she's got this all figured out. She's enjoying her better life, sitting on my couch with my stuff, but she's about to find out just how wrong she is. Let her think she's winning. In 4 days, she'll realise that some decisions have consequences that she never even saw coming. Update. First off, thanks again to everyone for the support on my last post. Seriously, your comments are keeping me grounded. I don't know where I'd be without your encouragement. Now here's what's happened in the last 24 hours. Remember that document I mentioned? The one I found in our shared cloud drive? The investment agreement Vivian signed? Well, what she didn't realise when she was trying to push me out of her life is that I didn't just help her set up the portfolio, I funded most of it. The agreement clearly stated that if we separated, certain assets would need to be liquidated. But that's not the part that made her panic. Last night, Vivian's sister Sophia called me. She was crying. Hunter, I can't stay quiet anymore. Ezekiel has done this before, 3 times. He targets women like Vivian, uses their connections, and once he's got what he wants, he disappears. I already knew about Ezekiel's history, but Sophia had details I hadn't uncovered. She sent me screenshots of conversations between Vivian and Ezekiel from 2 months ago. They weren't just discussing their affair, they were planning business opportunities, using confidential information I had shared with Vivian about my company's upcoming projects. It got worse. Hunter, Sophia said, voice shaking. Last week, Vivian asked me to hold on to some documents for her. She said they were just backup work papers, but when I looked today, I found something else. She's been moving money around, big amounts. I thanked Sophia and hung up, immediately logging into our joint accounts. Sure enough, there it was. Vivian had been making large purchases, disguising them as household expenses. Art, designer furniture, even a new car. All of it bought in the last month. She'd even hidden them under miscellaneous transactions. The kicker, she'd used our joint account for the down payments, but the bulk of the purchases were funded through her company's expense account, the one I helped her set up years ago. The same one where I was still listed as her financial advisor. I could already feel the weight of this sinking in. It was time for Vivian to understand exactly what she was risking. I sent her a text. Just had an interesting chat with the board about those expense reports, especially the ones from last month. By the way, the couch looks great. Original receipts would be helpful. Her response came in almost instantly. What are you talking about? Oh, Vivian, you have no idea. The funny part? While I was waiting for her to panic, I found out something even juicier. Ezekiel's history with Carson and Mills, 3 settlements in just 2 years. That guy's got a track record. The typing indicator on my phone appeared and disappeared a few times. Then she finally wrote, Hunter, we need to talk. I replied with a simple, we will, after I finish my meeting with the ethics committee tomorrow. Her next message was pure panic. What meeting, Hunter? Please, let's discuss this. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded Sophia's screenshots to my lawyer and drafted an email to the board about the financial irregularities I had discovered. Just a precaution, not sending it yet. Then Diamond showed up at my hotel with takeout and a USB drive. You won't believe what I found, he said, pulling up files on his laptop. Turns out Ezekiel had been recording his conversations with Vivian. Not just pillow talk, but detailed discussions about business plans, confidential client info, upcoming projects, everything. He's using her, Damon said, shaking his head, and she's so far gone she can't see what's coming. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up. Vivian had gone from panic to bargaining. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. I can explain everything. Please don't do anything hasty. And then the final message came through. The board doesn't need to know about this. We can figure something out. I smiled to myself. This was it. The last straw. I sent my final text of the night. Check your email in 10 minutes. Pay particular attention to the detachment from March 15th. March 15th, the day she signed the partnership agreement with the company, the one she clearly didn't read carefully enough, the one that gave me significant control over the company's major financial decisions. As I sit here, my phone is buzzing non-stop with texts from Vivian, each one more desperate than the last. Ezekiel's name has vanished from her social media. That fancy designer couch she bought with company money, the one she'd been so proud of, is now up for sale online. Funny how quickly things change when the pressure's on. Tomorrow morning, I have a meeting, but not with the ethics committee. No, that was just to rattle her. The real meeting is with someone who has much more to lose if Vivian's recent activities come to light. I'll update you all once everything's in motion. For now, though, I'm just watching Vivian slowly come to the realization that the better choice she made might cost her everything she's worked for, and I haven't even played my biggest card yet. Update 2. Quick update from the last 24 hours because things escalated faster than I expected. Remember that meeting I mentioned? The one that wasn't really about Vivian's expense reports? Yeah, that was just the tip of the iceberg. When I helped Vivian land her position 5 years ago, I didn't just make a few key introductions. I invested heavily under a holding company name she never bothered to research. Back then, she was so caught up in her new role and that shiny corner office that she barely read the paperwork she was signing. Now, I've got it all. This morning I walked into the boardroom, armed with everything. Every receipt, every recorded conversation, every suspicious transaction from the past 3 months. But I didn't present a thing. Instead, I just slid my shareholder voting rights onto the table. The look on the chairman's face? Absolutely priceless. "You're the silent partner for Morgan Holdings, was sir?" he asked, completely caught off guard. I just nodded. "And I'm concerned about some recent decisions made by certain members of the executive team." That's when my phone buzzed. Olivia, a colleague of mine who'd been keeping an eye on Vivian and Ezekiel, texted, "Ezekiel just walked out of Vivian's office. He looks pissed. She's crying." Turns out Ezekiel had his own meeting this morning with his previous company's legal team. They were very interested in some confidential information that had mysteriously ended up with their competitors. The timing was impeccable. It perfectly matched the dates of his business dinners with Vivian. This was all coming together faster than I'd anticipated. I stayed in the board meeting for exactly 47 minutes, long enough to voice my concerns about the company's direction and suggest a thorough audit of all executive expenses. That was more than enough time for word to reach Vivian that her silent partner, the one who owned 12% of the company, was actually her soon-to-be ex-husband. Her messages started flooding in. "Vivian, how long have you owned shares?" "Vivian, why didn't you tell me?" "Vivian, Hunter, please can we talk about this?" And the last one? "Vivian, you're going to destroy everything I've worked for." I couldn't resist replying to that one. "No, you did that yourself. Check your email." I sent her 2 things. Screenshots of her conversations with Ezekiel, discussing confidential company info, and the partnership agreement she signed 5 years ago, the one that had a very specific clause about ethical violations. The next call came from Sophia. "Ezekiel just dumped Vivian. He said she's too much of a liability. She's losing it, Hunter. She tried to access the executive accounts, but her credentials were already suspended." "How do you know about the accounts?" I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. Sophia's response was calm, almost detached. "Because I'm the one who suggested the audit to the board last week, after I saw those documents she asked me to hold." She paused. "I love my sister, but what she did to you, and then asking me to help hide evidence." That was when my lawyer called. The board had made their decision. They weren't firing Vivian. That would cause a public scandal, and they didn't want that. Instead, they were offering her a choice: resign quietly or face a full investigation into her conduct. Either way, her stock options would be suspended pending review. Just as I was about to head back to the hotel, Damon sent a text. "Dude, check the security cameras." I logged into the feed and watched Vivian, back at the house, frantically going through files in the home office. The same office where 3 years ago I'd installed a hidden safe behind the painting of our honeymoon in Bali. The safe where I kept copies of every document, every investment, every piece of evidence showing how I'd helped build Vivian's career, had always been my insurance policy, and now it was her undoing. She found it, of course. She tried every combination she could think of. Our wedding date, her birthday, the day she got her promotion. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The combination. The date she signed the partnership agreement, the very day she gained everything she's about to lose. I could see it on the security feed, Vivian's face frozen in frustration as she punched in combination after combination. The desperation was starting to set in, but she still didn't know the full scope of what was coming. My phone rang again. It was the chairman of the board. Tanor, Hunter, we need to talk about the future of the company. I took one last look at the security feed. Vivian had given up on the safe for now. She was sitting at my desk, head in her hands. In the background, I could see the designer couch, the one she'd bought to impress Ezekiel, already showing signs of wear. Funny, isn't it? She thought that couch would symbolize her better choice, but in reality, it was already falling apart. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I told the chairman, keeping my voice calm. And I have some ideas about restructuring the executive team. Tomorrow Vivian will learn exactly how much power I've held all along, not just over her career, but over every decision she thought she made independently these past 5 years. The best part? I never had to raise my voice, never had to make threats. I simply let her own choices catch up with her. Final update. It's been a month since my last update. I wanted to wait until everything was finalised before sharing how it all ended. Remember that last card I mentioned? It wasn't just about the company shares or the expense reports. It was something much more calculated, much more deliberate. Let's start with the couch, the $112,000 designer piece Vivian bought to impress Ezekiel. She didn't just use company money, she used funds from a special account, one set up specifically for an upcoming merger. The same merger Ezekiel was trying to gain inside information about. But here's the beautiful part. I knew she'd do something like this. 5 years of marriage taught me that Vivian couldn't resist showing off. So 3 months before my Seattle trip, I started laying the groundwork. Every casual conversation about my company's projects, every detail about potential deals I shared over dinner. It all seemed like valuable information to her, but it was worthless. The real projects, the big deals, those were hidden behind NDAs that Vivian never even knew existed. The morning after my last update, the board called an emergency meeting. They presented Vivian with everything: the unauthorized expenses, the leaked information, the recorded conversations with Ezekiel. But the final blow had came from Sophia. My sister-in-law walked into the boardroom with a laptop in hand, containing emails between Vivian and Ezekiel. Emails discussing how they'd use my insider information to profit from the merger. The emails were dated weeks before I even left for Seattle. Sophia's voice was steady as she said, every time she asked me to hold on to documents, every conversation about using Hunter's position for their benefit, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Vivian tried to defend herself, claiming she was manipulated by Ezekiel. That's when Olivia played her part. She presented evidence showing Ezekiel had been working with our biggest competitor the entire time. Every piece of valuable information Vivian leaked to him, carefully crafted misinformation designed to lead our competitors down expensive dead ends. The board's decision was unanimous. Vivian was terminated, her stock options voided, and her reputation in the industry utterly destroyed. But I wasn't done. Remember that partnership agreement she signed? The one giving me control over major financial decisions? It had another clause. Any ethical violations would trigger an immediate review of all personal assets acquired during the partnership. The house she'd bought with a loan I'd guaranteed her, the car bought through a company lease I arranged, even her precious designer wardrobe. Most of it was bought using company funds I helped her access. By the time my lawyers finished, Vivian was left with exactly what she brought into our marriage: her personal savings and a stack of student loans I'd quietly stopped paying. Ezekiel disappeared the moment things went south, but not before my private investigator documented every meeting, every transaction, every lie he told Vivian about his supposed wealthy family and business empire. The guy was a charmer, I'll give him that, but he never saw me coming. Last week I received a hand-delivered letter from Vivian. Inside was a house key, the same one she'd had made when she changed the locks, and a note. I understand now. You didn't just help build my career, you designed its self-destruct sequence. She was right. Every step up the corporate ladder, every connection she made, every opportunity she grabbed. I'd carefully constructed it all with one purpose in mind. It could all be dismantled the moment she betrayed my trust. The couch, the one she thought would symbolize her better choice. It was just delivered to my new office. A reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's world. It's about letting them destroy it themselves while thinking they're winning. Damon asked me yesterday if it was all worth it. If spending years setting up such an elaborate contingency plan was excessive. I looked around my new corner office, the one that used to be Vivian's, and smiled. The best revenge can erase. I told him, is watching someone realise that their better choice was actually their biggest mistake. Yesterday I signed the final paperwork. The merger went through. The real one, not the decoy Vivian and Ezekiel tried to exploit. The company's value tripled overnight. Vivian watched it happen from her parents' guest room, where she's been staying since everything fell apart. Her last text to me was simple. "You planned this all along, didn't you?" I didn't respond. Some questions don't need answers. The designer couch sits in my office now, barely used. A $112,000 trophy of someone else's hubris. Sometimes the best things in life aren't free. They're just paid for by someone else's mistakes.